Good evening, everybody. Open heart, open mind. Welcome to the Sattva channel, the official online platform of the Sattva Project. First of all, on behalf of the Sattva Project, I would like to express our thankfulness to our StreamYard sponsor and media partners, Durian ASEAN and Durian FM. And not to forget also the important man behind the scene, our broadcast director, Brother Chong. Thank you very much for your generous contribution and kind efforts. Hi, Brother Chong. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone. Very good evening, and welcome to our new show, a new topic. Please do like and share so that more people can benefit from our broadcast this evening. And for those who are going to watch later on YouTube, please do subscribe and like as well. Back to you, Ram.
Thank you, Brother Chong. This evening's program will be into uh, three parts. The one is the introduction, and then the discussion, and then we will do dedication at the end. As part of the daily Dharma series, we're going to have a very meaningful and beneficial discussion on how to meditate correctly, Shunyata and its view, meditation and action. So let me give you a brief introduction about our speakers today. Of course, first, I'm the facilitator. That's myself, Ram. I'm the facilitator for the Sattva Youth Group. I came from a technical IT programming background, and I did a master's degree and all, and with some business experience. And I'll be your facilitator today. Please welcome our honored speaker. First is Khenpo Sonam Tsewang. Khenpo Sonam Khenpo Sonam Tsewang graduated at the Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies in Varanasi and also studied at Namdroling Monastery at the Najur Nyingma Institute, where he was enthroned as a Khenpo in 2011. He has translated the all-pervading melodious sound of the thunder, the outer liberation story of Turton Minjur Dorje, together with Judith Amsis, and is currently working on a new translation of Longchenpa's Treasury of Pith Instructions. He travels extensively with Khenchen Pema Sherab Rinpoche, serving as his translator. Welcome, Khenpo Sonam. How are you, Khenpo? Well, we are honored to have you on this discussion this evening.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all the viewers and listeners. And I'm really honored to be here to be part of this Sattva Project program. And today I would like to share my thoughts on this particular topic and hope we will have a fruitful discussion.
Thank you, Khenpo. To our next honored speaker, Venerable Myong and Sunim. Venerable Myong Sunim is usually called Venerable Sunim. Was born to a Chinese family in Malaysia in 1959. He received his education in the UK, culminating with an MBA and worked in finance. Venerable Myong An Sunim began his meditation practice in 1992 after meeting his teacher Zen Master Son San in Hong Kong. He was ordained as a monk in 1997 and spent the next 16 years in Korea doing intensive meditation retreats. He received INCA, the authorization to teach Kongans and lead retreats from two Zen masters in 2015. Venerable Sunim has over 30,000 hours of meditation experience, teaches mindfulness and Zen in Penang and internationally. His teaching approach combines the wisdom of the ancient teachers with the science of meditation to arrive at ways of practice that are well suited for our contemporary lifestyle. Welcome, Venerable Sunim.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. And it's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight, including our panel speakers. And thank you very much for the invitation to join you tonight for this dialogue.
Thank you to our next speaker, Dr. Giuliano Giustarini. He has a PhD in Indological Studies from the University of Turin, Master of Arts in Indian Religions and Philosophies from La Sapienza University of Rome. Lecturer at the International PhD Program in Textual Buddhist Studies of the Mahidol University in Thailand. Translator and lecturer at the Fondazione Maitreya Project. Welcome, Dr. Giuliano. Good evening.
Hello. Good evening. All the best to everybody. And thank you for having me here. And I'm honored to stay here and to have these honorable panelists with me. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. We will start our discussion. So the topic will be the how to meditate correctly, Shunyata and its view, meditation and action. I know you all have extremely high level of knowledge on these fields, and I hope you will be able to share some theoretical knowledge as well as some practical knowledge from your own perspective, your own daily applications as well. Thank you. Please begin. Who would like to begin? Maybe Venerable Sunim, maybe you can start. What's concise, say, maybe say 30 seconds, what is Shunyata?
30 seconds. People have written books on what is Shunyata. So I guess Shunyata is not what we think it is. Okay, we always think of it as something, but it has been translated into English as emptiness, right? And,
thank you. We got your answer.
Okay, I was just going to. Okay, fine.
Okay. When Venerable Khenpo Sonam, maybe you can give a very brief, concise on Shunyata. Then we will continue again, of course.
Yeah, what I would like to make a kind of pithy statement is that when we try to understand Shunyata, one statement that I would like to say is that nothing is independent and everything is interdependent. If you understand this statement correctly, then you will have the full understanding of emptiness.
Thank you, Khenpo. And Dr. Giuliano, please.
Okay, I will try to stick mostly to the Pali scriptures for the definition. So it will be Shunyata as Sunyam, empty of Athena Taniyena, a self, a separate self, whatever belongs or whatever is related to a self, empty of anything separate. So I guess I just said, in other words, interdependent, but this is the core definition that we find in the Pali scriptures.
Okay, so what I heard is empty of anything separate, interdependent, and not what we think. Okay, now we can use this as a basis. So what we are not what we should not be thinking about, or what we are thinking about that we are missing the point. Venerable Sunim, maybe you can take over from here, and other speakers can also join in and use this as a basis. I'm pretty sure it's not what we think, otherwise we wouldn't be discussing here, but yes.
Okay, so I have to preface this by saying that I haven't studied the texts or all the scholarly texts on emptiness. It's not what I do. So please excuse me if I say the wrong thing. But this is just from some, I guess, experience during my time doing meditation. So when you say emptiness or shunyata, however you want to translate it, it can be a very difficult concept to grasp. Okay, it's something that's very hard to nail down. And as Venerable Khenpo said, you have to understand it correctly, and it's not an easy concept to understand. So I would say that in my mind, the kind of easiest entry to getting an insight or a hint on what it is think of this emptiness of space, like extreme spaciousness is infinite. So space is completely empty, as you know, but also it contains everything. That's it.
I have a quick question on what you just said. It contains of everything, or it is everything? Can you please clarify on this?
It contains everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Khenpo, would you like to add?
Yeah, I think when we talk about emptiness, it's the most maybe misunderstood, because the term itself is kind of in a way misleading, because when we say empty, then we always think of nothingness. So emptiness is not nothingness. So that's the first thing that we need to know. Because when we read the Heart Sutra, there's no eyes, no ears, and so forth. When we talk about that, the only thing the words can express is the negation of things. And emptiness is not just negation of things. Emptiness is to know that each and every phenomena are interdependent. They don't have an independent identity as such. In order to maintain an identity, it has to rely upon something else. So therefore, all things are interdependent. There's nothing which is independent. And when you understand that, then you won't get misled to emptiness as something nothing, something empty, like an empty cup. It's not like an empty cup.
So were you referring to the Heart Sutra where the teaching says form is emptiness and also emptiness is form? So it's actually inseparable. It's not nothingness, because there's a second part to it as well.
Yeah. But it's very difficult right away to express all these things in words, because when we try to use words and concepts, we are only kind of dissecting what it is, the emptiness as a whole, which cannot be expressed like, in thoughts, words, and expression. It can't be kind of formulated. When we try to do that, we only kind of make it into, we just chop it into pieces, and we don't really have the whole picture. So therefore, the first step is to negate what it is. We think that eyes exist, and then therefore, in order to apply the antidote of that strong grasping that I exist independently, then the first step is to negate that I do not exist. Now the next question comes, if I do not exist, does it mean that I doesn't exist at all? No, it doesn't exist at all. It appears. There is an appearance aspect to it also. So when you understand the appearance and emptiness aspect as something non-dual, then you get the whole picture of emptiness.
Thank you, Khenpo. Dr. Giuliano, would you like to add?
Yes. I think that Sunim and Khenpo pointed out two important obstacles that we have in order to understand Shunyata. So one is words themselves, words and notions. So we are using notions, and therefore we are limiting the sense. We are using a vocabulary which is limited, that cannot actually touch the depth of emptiness. This is one problem. And the other one that was pointed out is that when we use words, we mostly use words that indicate negation, what is not. And when we use negation, of course, we tend to use the word nothing and nothingness. So this is the second trap that we may have. At first, we don't use words, but as soon as we use words, because we need to say something, and we use negation, so terms that actually try to deny the identity, the separate identity, and therefore to deny, we say no, it is not. And so we have this second trap, which is nothing. So we think that nothing can cover the meaning of emptiness. And this is the second possible mistake. I think that, thinking of the Pali sources, I would say that one term, I think, addresses this point. It is atakavachara. It means that reality itself and emptiness cannot be defined. It cannot be the object of thinking, in a way. So, or mere thinking. This is one term, and the other thing that I think is, say, universally Buddhist. Another method that may help overcome the difficulties of language and the problem of nothingness is the famous Chatuskoti, the tetralemma of the four directions. So negation is one of the corners that we may possibly use, but it's not the whole picture. The Chatuskoti, the four directions are all denied. So the direction that something is, it is not. Both it is and is not. Neither is nor it is not. So when we deny these four negation, actually there's not much room for words. There is a kind of a higher level of experience. And I think this is how, in a way, language may help reach, or at least have a glimpse of emptiness.
Thank you, Giuliano. I would like to ask all of you to maybe come up with something. Now it's, for me as a facilitator, and I'm trying to follow the train of thoughts here, it seems to be very theoretical so far, from what we have discussed.
Oh, if I may interrupt, Raman, there is a message for you.
Yes, thank you. That's very kind of the audience. Can you please maybe give a practical or day-to-day or your experiential example or a pointer, please? I think this will be beneficial for us all. Any taker?
Yeah. What I would like to mention, in understanding emptiness, the main purpose of actually the teaching of emptiness is not to negate something. It is talking about what is the reality of things. And the reality of things is such that we always take things so independently. Suppose it's very, on a practical level, we say, when we hear a praise, for example, a word of praise to us, and then we feel that, okay, this is something very good, and there's a strong kind of liking and grasping to it. At the same time, on the other hand, we also hear blame, insult, and at that time it almost feel like one is shattered, So that actually shows that how far we strongly grasp, and we strongly kind of are attached to things. When we study about emptiness, we learn that things are not that real as we kind of take it to, We don't really see what is the reality. It's kind of we take it so seriously, we take it so substantially, concretely, and which makes our life so miserable. So if you have understanding of, if one has understanding of the emptiness, the interdependence of things, that when things arise, they arise, they abide, and they cease to be. And all of these happens, whatever events that happens in our life, all this happens because of causes and conditions. When causes and conditions comes, these happens. When causes and conditions are no more, these cease to be. And that's what is the reality. It comes from emptiness, it kind of dissolves into emptiness. And there's nothing like which we should be kind of, making it so complicated by holding on to things. And that's the key kind of message of emptiness in our practical day-to-day life, that how one can let go of things and how one can hold on to, at the same time how one can let go of things. When you have a true understanding of emptiness, you will know how to hold on to things skillfully, at the same time how you can let go of things, so that one's life becomes so free, like it's not bound by kind of limitations, bound by pain and all this emotional pain and psychological pain that we have, is all because of that strong grasping that we have. And emptiness is the antidote to that.
Thank you, Khenpo. Next taker for some example or your experiential story, or Venerable Sunim, please.
It's actually very difficult to try to explain what an example of emptiness. So the closest thing that I can perhaps give you is this. That's it. Because it's not something that you can explain. Yeah. So, or rather, it's very difficult to get to it through explanation. It's an experiential thing. So, if you truly attain emptiness, opening your mouth is kind of like a mistake, because there's nothing. It's already empty. But on the other hand, we have this form. Okay, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. We already have this form body. So the question is, what are you going to do with this gift of this precious body that you have? What are you going to do with it? You have a lot of choices, but what are you going to do with it to ensure that you're living a meaningful life that is beneficial to the world? That's my particular opinion. Other people may disagree, but we already have form, although we originally come from emptiness. So what are we going to do with it?
Thank you, Venerable. Dr. Giuliano, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I will try. I will try not to be silent also. And it's difficult also to be silent. Of course, this is something that requires a training. I would say that maybe on the same line of Sunim and Khenpo, I would say that we may perhaps indicate, or at least in my experience, my mind immediately goes not just to experience of emptiness itself, which I cannot say properly, I think, about, and but we can think of what is not. So I appreciate the fact that what happens and what I can actually see about myself is when the understanding of emptiness is absent. So when the problem arises, problems arise when we think that there is something solid and independent. And I think that everyone can experience the fact that since we see reality as something independent, whatever kind of experience we have, the response is clinging or pushing away. It's a kind of automatic response that we think it works in order to get absolute happiness, but it doesn't work, of course, because there is this constant effort, this is constant struggle. Effort is a understatement. It's a constant struggle, a constant fight against experience, because we try to cling to what we like, we push away what we don't like. When there is the understanding of interdependence or emptiness, the experience may flow in a way. There is not this constant reaction to experience, this uptent, this frustration of trying to cling to things, to keep them, to make them last longer, or to push them away because we don't like them. So I think in everyday experience, this is something that perhaps we don't even need a training to know that. Of course, we need a training to see, because we tend to blame something else. When we believe that reality is solid, we blame something that is supposedly against us. But when we start seeing something empty, we can see where the problem arises.
Thank you, Giuliano. I think we have touched slightly, maybe the surface of the view. We still have to cover the meditation and action related to the emptiness or the shunyata as well. However, I would like to maybe ask the speakers to please also address, like we are in a world where we are encouraged to struggle somehow, directly or indirectly, and if there's no struggle and progress and all these things, something is wrong. Or how do we work with all these issues in synchronized in a synchronous manner with taking shunyata to the view, meditation, and action? How do we combine, or what approach can we do to lead our lives by not contradicting ourselves? Maybe Khenpo, please. Thank you.
I think I just mentioned this particular point in the before also about Buddhism teaches you how to hold and when to hold, and how to let go and when to let go. And this combination is so important, because the thing is, when we talk about letting go, then of course it has its own kind of function, it has its own advantage, but you should know like when to let go and when not to let go also, because then if you let go, there's no order in your life. And we were talking about this particularly, like what you should be doing in your life, in your day-to-day life. You have your each one of us has our own responsibility, as a teacher, as a student, as a householder, in different capacities. So we have to function in this material world. We have to function in this conceptual world. So therefore, like, we need the balance of holding on and letting go, because without that, then we can't make the best out of who we are. So therefore, the concept of, like, I bring in the concept of what we call the relative and the ultimate. In Buddhism, we talk about relative. Relative is how we function in the relative world, in the conceptual world. And there should be a structure, there should be a cause and effect of it. And we should have a clear view of that. Understanding that with causes and condition, with all our responsibilities, what should we do and what we should not, what we should avoid, having the very clear view of it, yet not bound by it. So it's kind of a very tricky thing to do, but I think it's not impossible. It is something possible which we can balance between letting go and holding on. it is just like a very skillful bicycle rider, you know. Initially, when we learn to ride a bicycle, like we have to really hold the handle very tightly, you know, otherwise we'll fall down. We don't have balance at that time. So in the middle stage, then somehow we kind of manage to kind of ride the bicycle, I mean, to some extent, and then our grip to the handle a little bit loosens, you know, and we can ride that. And once we are very skillful, like even without kind of not really kind of holding too tight, you know, we still kind of can ride the bicycle and reach our destination. So I think like understanding emptiness and understanding about these two truths, relative and the ultimate, which are actually the two facets of emptiness, will really help us function in a productive way without kind of like bound by it. And that I think is so important.
Thank you, Khenpo. Venerable Sunim, would you like to add to that?
Well, actually, Khenpo already explained it very well. There's not much to add because it is essentially a balance, as he said, between holding and letting go. But we human beings tend to have a very binary mindset. Black, white, yes, no. Nothing in between, you know. So that's why I think we find it very hard to find some kind of balance between doing enough to survive in this world, to have enough to eat, some place to stay, work to do, and also something to satisfy our spiritual needs, you know. So it's always a balance. And like the Buddha said, you know, life is dukkha, it's not satisfying. So you will very soon find out if you go too much one way, like you're going out of balance, then your whole life can be upside down because you're putting too much energy going the wrong way. And then karma, cause and effect, will tell you, you know, if your eyes are open enough to see it, then you realize I have to kind of adjust. So it's always a balancing act, like riding, like Khenpo said, riding a bicycle. So as long as we are aware of it, then we can kind of find the middle way. It's always a balance.
Thank you. Thank you, Venerable. Something I really, even I myself, have to contemplate on, but many good pointers there. Dr. Giuliano, would you like to add?
Yeah, it's not easy. I think that after Khenpo and Sunim, what my task is basically to confirm and maybe to paraphrase a little bit what they already said. But yeah, I think that I was impressed actually by what I think would be at some point an important topic of the conversation. So, of course, the middle way, which is the understanding of Shunyata. The understanding of Shunyata is the middle way, and therefore that helps us to stay in between, or maybe beyond beyond the struggle, beyond our binary system, in a way, no? Beyond aversion and attachment, beyond existence and non-existence and nothingness and so on. And I would say maybe that one of the problems in applying the understanding of Shunyata in daily life is the assumption that action is struggle. Action is not necessarily struggle, I think. And we realize when there is a problem, when there is friction, when there is actually something that hurts in a way, something painful. And so, yeah, to say in two words, function is necessary, friction is not necessary. Friction is the problem. When I go against, what happens? Something is wrong. When actually I'm working on life, on everyday life, when I'm making a good use of this expression, I mean, this body and mind, well, that something good may happen. but assuming that in order to do something, in order to act, actually there must be struggle. Yes and no. The Buddha himself said that I never argue with anyone. It's the world that argues with me. And I think it may apply to any experience. No, we don't need to fight against experience, even when apparently experience is fighting against us. Because what we may do is understanding that that's empty, and this maybe may help us act in a different way, maybe more efficient as well.
Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. I want to propose a question. It might be tricky. How does this emptiness, how does it relate to, or how would it relate to our well-being, our happiness, and our love?
Love?
Or love, or happiness without
Okay.
our, like the general love, the general happiness. To everybody, please. Any takers, please feel free.
I think, as I was mentioning about interdependence, a deep understanding of interdependence really kind of like opens up our heart, and so important because it really works on our rigid mind, our habituated mind, which always thinks that oneself, or any phenomenon is something like independent of its own, it's an island of its own, and which is not true. In reality, everything is so interconnected, interlinked. So one cannot exist, independently, even though in this modern world where everybody is striving to be independent, like I want to be an independent in finance, I want to independent country, I want an independent life, so much of emphasis on independence is there, and which is going against the reality, because you can't really be 100% independent, if you think carefully, like what you eat, what you drink, what you wear, where you live, even the air that you breathe, everything is kind of dependent. It's very much interlinked, very intricate. It's a kind of web of things, And when we understand it to the deepest level, not just kind of on a surface level, then there's no boundary. There's no kind of like all these divisions that we have created amongst ourselves, South, North, white, black, Asians, Americans, and so forth. So many divisions that we have created based on different, based on race, based on color, based on language, and which actually hampers or prevents and blocks us from loving each and every one, opening our heart without any boundaries, without any bias, without any prejudices, without any partiality. And when we really understand the deeper level of interdependence, then we will appreciate the existence of each and every one, all sentient beings, even the animate things, the earth that we live in, the world that we live in, we appreciate. And there will be kind of like a deep respect and love that kind of springs forth, that arises from that understanding. And I don't think there will be any room for selfishness.
Thank you, Khenpo. Venerable Sunim, I think you have something to say.
I was thinking maybe Dr. Giuliano, because always we get to say everything, then
maybe next time.
Yeah, so maybe
Okay.
Before me, Dr.
Okay.
Giuliano,
Okay.
you have something
Dr.
to say,
Giuliano.
Okay.
then I will pick up at the end.
Okay, actually, I like that I could take advantage of speaking after you. So I could have more things to comment. I was more inspired than actually, yeah. But okay, thank you, Sunim. I think, yeah, I was struck. Also, I was struck by this question. Actually, it's a very good question, Ram. Especially when you said also how about love? That's quite tricky. It's quite difficult. Now, what does emptiness to do with love? And of course, we know that in Mahayana Buddhism, not only Mahayana Buddhism, but there is this particular emphasis Mahayana Buddhism on the combination of Shunyata and Karuna. So we know that when we talk about one, we cannot avoid talking about the other. And so, how are they related? This is, I think, is a great point, and I think that the word that I listen to now from Khenpo is a boundaries. So we believe that actually love is made of boundaries. We believe that we must be tied to someone. We believe that we must cling. We believe that we have to be attached to life. We have to grasp all the time, and that is love, what we call love. But when this clinging, grasping is let go of, or is in a way, I would say, dissolved, gradually dissolved or immediately dissolved, depending on the tradition. But anyway, when it is decreased, when it decreases, we can have a glimpse of what real love is, which is beyond boundaries, without boundaries, is without this continuous request for a reward, indeed, an emotional reward, or all the various expectations that we all know. So emptiness is not a kind of or a mere philosophical notion in this sense, because actually it's what reveals that when we are less selfish, when everything is not about me, and there are no solid entities that I need to ask for my happiness. When we realize that it's actually a delusion, well, in that case, we may have a glimpse of what real love is.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. Venerable Sunim, please.
Yeah, so actually, Dr. Giuliano and Khenpo have said pretty much everything. There is, we said we are totally interdependent. And if we realize that, then we have some way of getting some happiness in our life, some love. And I just want to clarify, when I talk about love, it's not the romantic love, it's or we call it attachment love, where I love you as long as you do something for me, basically. So this is more like this big love, this universal love, like mother's love. So the way that I kind of see it is this: originally everything is empty. Like 100 years ago, none of us were here. We were zero. Then sometime later, we popped out of our mother's womb. So we become form. We take a form. And 100 years from now, we won't be here anymore. We disappear back into emptiness. And that is not just us, it's everything. This whole universe has the same kind of, follows the same process. So when we realize that actually we're all interconnected in one way or another. And from there, we start to see the connection that we have with all things, not just living things, as Khenpo said, every single thing. And if you feel that you're not separate from anything outside of you, then you're not going to damage it or hurt it. So it's kind of a roundabout way of saying, we need to care for everything. Try not to hurt anything.
Thank you, Venerable. There seems to be two aspects. One is the emptiness of self, and also maybe emptiness of phenomena. Khenpo, would you be kind enough to maybe share some knowledge specific to these two differences?
According to the Mahayana interpretation commentaries, the emptiness of self is more like normally we all have, like, based on our experience, we have this very strong feeling within our heart that I exist. For example, I'm a Khenpo, I'm Sonam, and so, and that kind of like the way it appears to us, way I experience it, is something kind of very solid and concrete. It's something that, just as I mentioned before, like when somebody praises me, I'm elated and I'm kind of like cloud nine. When somebody blames me, insults me, I'm shattered into pieces. And it almost feel like it's something, the feeling is like something that is, there's tangible, something that is strong, concrete, substantial thing is within me. And that's how I feel it and how I perceive it. And the inquiry here is so important. Where is that I? Where is that person who got hurt or who get kind of elated after being praised? And when that inquiry is done, there's no way to search other than, no place to search other than this aggregate, this body, this form, and the sensation, the feelings, the consciousness, the thought, the emotions, the perception. And when that inquiry is done, you really don't find, like when you dissect these aggregates, then you really don't find that I, the substantial I, the concrete I. Just as same as like if you want to search where the car is by removing the components, the windshield, the wheels, the engine, the steering, and the seat inside the cushions and so forth. When you dissect that, you really don't find where the car is. So it is just a label. So in the same way, this person, this individual whom I so dearly cherish, does not exist in the way that I think it to exist. And when that investigation is done, and when you come to realize and understand that this does not exist the way it is, where it appears to exist, and there is the gap that you find, and when you understand that realization of what we call the selflessness of individual dawns in. Now the same can be applied to all phenomena. It is not just the person, even the body, even the sensation, even the phenomena, the objects that you see around. When you apply that to all the phenomena, whether it is conditioned, unconditioned, whatever it may be, when that investigation is done, you find that nothing is independent, nothing is singular, nothing is permanent. So in that way, one comes to realize and understand the selflessness of all phenomena. So that's the difference. So therefore, that's how the Mahayana commentaries put it.
Thank you, Venerable Khenpo. We have a question from the audience. A small question on how to go about practicing the path of Shunyata and its view. Can you please offer some guidance? This is a request from the audience. And I would like to maybe extend that question a little bit. How would it relate to refuge, for example? Anyone, please?
I think Venerable, please, Venerable Shun.
Please, Sunim.
Okay. I think the first thing to acknowledge is that we already have form. Okay. So we're not trying to, well, in my practice, I'm not trying to get into emptiness, but how do you use this form that you have in the most, well, in Buddhism would say the wisest, the most compassionate way, the most helpful to all beings that's possible. So that's the actual function, I would say, of emptiness. To see that emptiness, from emptiness comes form. That is already, you already have this like birth of form. So originally you're empty, now you have form. So how do you use that? So we practice compassion, we practice being kind, we practice not distinguishing between our likes and dislikes for one person or another person. It will appear, but we have to see that and then learn how to let that go and learn how to be kind to others, to be helpful in this world, to do something that is altruistic, to help others. So rather than, I would say from my personal opinion, okay, rather than try to get into an experience of emptiness, use what emptiness has given you, which is your form, to do something that will benefit others.
Thank you, Venerable. Or anybody else want to extend on this, on how to begin on the path, how to put it into practice?
What I would like to add to what Venerable just mentioned, just as I said, like the first thing is the understanding, developing the understanding of interdependence. Now, when I say interdependence, it's much more easier to relate than to say emptiness, because emptiness is a negation of, what we hear, and what comes to our mind when we first hear emptiness is like negating, like just as we read the Heart Sutra, no eyes, no ears, no mouth, and so forth. So it's like, for people who are not kind of, how to say, really do not understand the purpose of that statement, are scared. Like it's just like denial of reality. Like, of course, eyes are there. Why no eyes? So it's kind of like a sudden reaction would be there. What does this mean? No eyes, because we have eyes, we have ears, and so forth. So, so right away, that the very term of emptiness is not so relatable for common people. Whereas if you talk about interdependence, it's a roundabout way of understanding emptiness. When we say interdependence, everything is interconnected. Even me as a person, even though I think I am kind of a person, so and so, my body comes from my parents, my education comes from others. Whatever I am today is thanks to others. There's a lot of contribution. Of course, one has also made effort, but there's a lot of contribution from others. Without others, I can't exist. So from that basic level, if we try to understand, we build up our understanding first on a gross level and then slowly on a subtle level. Then when we understand the deep interconnected nature or interdependent nature of everything sentient and non-sentient, then there is kind of the openness, the opening of our heart happens, And why, I mean, like, we would really seem very foolish and absurd and unwise to create so many boundaries of this and that, you know, good and bad, white and black, positive, negative, all these boundaries that we have created, and which actually creates more tension than harmony. So if we understand the deeper, the more subtle understanding of interdependence. When we develop that, then what happens is the our heart opens out to all. We would be inclusive. There will be no terms and condition for us to love. There would be no terms and condition for us not to kind of like be kind to others. So therefore, like, this is how one can kind of develop on a daily basis. First, develop the understanding of interdependence, and then how we translate that into our way of thinking and psychologically, emotionally, and then that translate into our action. So even if we are not in a very good position to help others, even a small kind of word of comfort, just kind of lending your ears to others' problem, no matter how small it may seem, but it's significant in relieving other people's suffering, pain. And these days we don't really have time to listen to others. So therefore, like, lending your ears, giving time, your time, precious time of attention to others, all these are expressions of love, which comes from the understanding of deep interdependence.
Okay, thank you, Venerable Khenpo. Giuliano, would you like to add anything on this, or?
Okay, maybe just one little thing. Maybe I think that each tradition has several methods of several techniques of developing an understanding of emptiness in a daily life, and also in a practical sense. Also for instance, in the Pali tradition, there is a Shunyata Samadhi, so there is also a kind of concentration, meditation based upon emptiness. And I would say, for instance, speaking of me, I would distinguish two kinds of practice with the emptiness. There are the informal ways, and they are mostly based upon our understandings, and also there are formal practices that are explained in the suttas and by teachers in the tradition, and not only in the Theravada tradition. Of course, as I said, each tradition has specific methods. But what I think I would like to stress particularly is that I think that each one needs a personal guidance, especially about the formal meditation, because we are all different, and in a way we have different kinds of misunderstandings. We have different kinds of preconceptions, prejudices. So I think that we need to overcome them, and only a qualified teacher that knows us personally naturally give us a specific method to practice. So I think it's okay that we talk about how Buddhist practice is made of in terms of emptiness. But on the other hand, we should say that depending on the disciple, a teacher gives a personal assistance, a personal advice. And I think that each one should seek for that personal guidance. So I think that maybe the first piece of advice that I will give is find a teacher and stick to the teacher. A qualified good teacher, stick to the teacher, because I think there must be a relationship, a close relationship that goes on through time. Okay, yeah, that's all.
I think maybe one aspect of the question that was left out is relationship between the emptiness and the refuge. So I would say, like, if anybody understands and realizes and sees interdependence of things, not on a gross level, but on a subtle level, sees the Dharma. To see the Dharma is to see interdependence. Those who see interdependence sees the Dharma, and they are protected by the Dharma. So in that way, one takes refuge. One actually is in refuge.
That's very profound. Thank you, everyone. We have a question from the audience. The first question is, how do we prepare with this knowledge and understanding of, say, or what we should understand related to this topic? What should we understand, or how should this relate to dying, or preparation for dying? How should we train ourselves? Yes, Khenpo, please.
What I would like to suggest is, when we are dying, we are going through a very critical kind of a state of things. It's like, when dying is happening, when the separation of consciousness's body is happening, at that moment, the mind actually goes through a very kind of critical juncture. And as for practitioners, it's so important to kind of like prepare for that moment, because it's a very powerful moment. And in the Tibetan tradition, we say that it is during that time, at the moment of death, that the practitioner gets an opportunity to get enlightened. So therefore, in Tibetan Buddhist tradition, birthdays are not considered important. Death days are more important, considered to be more important. In preparation for a master, for every practitioner, particularly for masters, it's a very crucial juncture. And for ordinary people, of course, there are many kind of like practice, particular teachings which are which are meant to help during that period, during that transition. And what I feel is most important is, through the understanding of emptiness and interdependence, letting go. Now, letting go is so powerful practice at that moment. Now, what do we understand by letting go? Because at that moment of time, voluntarily, if you let go, that's the best thing you can help yourself. That's the best gift you can give yourself at that moment. Because involuntarily, you will have to let go. There's no choice. The body and consciousness are going to separate at that moment. And you have to leave aside everything that you cherish, even your dearest body. You have to leave aside and go. And let alone your wealth, your friends, circle of friends, family, everything that you consider so, important and so kind of that you treasure so much. You have to leave aside. There's no choice. So when you let go all of these, whatever things that, maybe like all of us, when we die, we have so many projects, unfinished projects. Nobody actually kind of dies, after completing all the projects, You will have hundreds and thousands of unfinished projects. So you have to let go of all this. When you let go of all this attachment to whatever you cherish the most, then it will really help you die peacefully in a very dignified manner. So therefore, like I would say, letting go is the best practice that you can have, and that's best gift that you can give yourself.
Thank you, Khenpo. Venerable Sunim, I think you have something to add.
Oh, okay. Well, Venerable Khenpo explained it very well. Our cultures, most of our cultures, are death denying. We're very fearful of death because, well, nobody ever comes back from the dead to tell us what it's like, you know. So it's this great big unknown. But it is an integral part of life. One time, one of my teacher students asked him, "What is life and death?" You know, because he was a little afraid. And then my teacher said to him, "We are life and death." So I think the first step is to recognize and accept that death is a part of life. It's a natural process, happens to everything. And if you are Buddhist, you believe in Buddhism, then you'll realize that this is not the first life you've had. It won't be the last. So it's like your body is a rental car that you rented from the universe. Then, as with any car, it will eventually get old, things will break down, and eventually it won't run anymore. And you have to give it up and change for a new car. So that's like our body. Our body will get old, will break down, and eventually we have to change it, but we will get a new one. Now, the important point is, what kind of body are you going to get? So that depends on the actions that you have done in this life and also previous lives. This is all cause and effect. So learning to actually, death is a very good teacher in teaching us how to live our life. Because if we learn to live our lives well, we love well, we are loved, we do things that are meaningful to us, then when it comes to let go of your body, you won't have so much holding, so much regrets, so much pain in your mind. Because that's very important. That also carries through. It's part of our karmic momentum. So actually, death is very good teaching. Dying, sorry, is very good teaching for us to learn how to live well today in this moment. Because if we learn to live uh, as a good human being, moment to moment in this life, we don't have so much to fear from death. So I think let's not fool ourselves that we can kind of ignore it and then we'll deal with it when it comes to the point, because it is such a big transition, as some people would say, that when you are on that verge of dying, there can be a lot of fear. One time, one of my Dharma, actually he was my teacher's student, he practiced mantra, and he had this mantra that he was trying to practice very, very constantly. And he was in an airplane, and suddenly the airplane had a problem. So the pilot said, "Everybody, please, adopt the safety position." The gas, the oxygen mask came down, and he put it on, and he was really frightened of dying. He thought, we're going to crash. And then he tried to remember the mantra. Could not. Because at that moment, there's so much confusion and perhaps also fear in your mind. So the point is that before we reach that point, we have to learn to acknowledge, to practice, and be accepting that one day we will have to give up this body. I mean, nobody gets out of this alive. Okay, nobody gets out of this alive. So if we learn to recognize and not attach so much to our body, our physical body, and with the teachings of Buddhism, then when the time comes for us to let go of it, we are more relaxed and more able to do so.
Yes, thank you. That's very profound as well. Dr. Giuliano, would you like to add to that about dying?
Yeah, okay.
Anything specific?
Well, actually, I thought of saying something, but after listening to Khenpo and Sunim, both venerables inspired me many things. So I will try to be concise and to stick to three simple things. One is about the scriptures, the Pali scriptures, so the strictly related to the moment and death, and death, the notion of death, and Shunyata. And it's that Shunyata itself is considered not only as a notion and as the reality itself, but as a path. It's called the Asankata Gami Maggo, so which is the path leading to the unconditioned or the unconstructed, the deathlessness. So I think that that inspires us deep faith in the Dhamma, because in the Dhamma we have actually the support to overcome death itself. Is a Amata Dhamma, a deathless Dhamma that we are working towards. So I think this is a kind of compass that we should keep in mind, that despite the fact that there is, of course, no, I would say, there is fear, of course, about that and so on, but we have this compass that actually places us in a place where fear is not the master, is not the dominant figure, and fear is just part of the picture. And this leads me to the second thing I wanted to say, which is I think the recommended approach to death and the moment of death would be to be patient with our fears, be benevolent with regard to our fears. Because we have fears and they can actually stay in the picture and not be our teachers. The teacher is the Dhamma, the teacher is the Buddha himself, and fear is not a teacher, but in a way it's a part of the teaching, but it's not what we should follow. And we can be benevolent about that. We can be, in a way, patient with ourselves when we are overcome by fear. And the third thing, actually, I was inspired by the teaching of Sunim right now, and I think we should keep in mind that this is a Buddhist teaching. So the whole picture includes rebirth, birth, death, birth, and that again. There is samsara. So death is not the end of everything. We are talking about something much bigger than ourselves as we conceive now. And thinking that in these terms, although actually we are proceeding towards the unconditioned, which is beyond the samsara itself, on the other hand, we should think that we are in a very broader picture, in a very broader condition, and that actually may, I would say, enlarge our sight of the path, and therefore may decrease the power of fears.
Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. You mentioned about fear, and of course, this is not just to Dr. Giuliano. We talk about fear. Is fear also itself insubstantial if we thoroughly investigate it? What's your view on this, Khenpo?
I think the fear is a product of attachment. other side of attachment. And attachment is very much based on grasping. When you grasp on something, then definitely you are attached to something. And when you are attached to something, then you always have the fear of losing it. So therefore, if you give up attachment, then fear kind of goes away. So I remember one particular quote from the 400 verses by Arya Deva. So where he mentions that whoever is mindful of momentary death, that means momentarily we are dying. We're dying, we are arising, we are dying, we are arising. So that is here and very now. It's not just, that does not apply to just the disintegration of the body or the separation of the body and the mind. As long as it is a conditioned thing, it always dies and it always arises. And when whoever is aware of that every moment, there will be no attachment. When there is no attachment, what is there to fear? And fear goes away. So therefore, it's kind of, therefore, fear itself is not substantial. Of course, you pointed it out that fear is a product of attachment. Attachment has its root in grasping, and grasping happens when you do not have understanding and realization of shunyata or interdependence.
Thank you, Khenpo. Honorable Sunim, maybe you can share your perspective on fear and dealing with it, please.
Yeah, fear in itself has no concrete basis. Is as we say, it's insubstantial. But as human beings, we are evolutionary developed, and fear is like a survival response. So, from that respect, from that point of view, fear is something that can teach us. Maybe something is very threatening to you, to your life, like in the past, when people in the Stone Ages, then some saber-toothed tiger tries to attack the tribe, then they get scared, they run or they fight. So that's the flight and fight response. So that response is very much already hardwired into us. So when we experience something fearful, whether it is real, an actual threat, or a perceived threat, and this is from the neuroscience, our brain can't tell the difference. So our body will react in the same way. You get scared, your vision narrows, your heart starts pumping harder. But here's a very interesting thing. All these reactions are caused, first of all, by the amygdala reacting, the reptile brain. And it stimulates the release of many kinds of chemicals in our body, maybe adrenaline or whatever, to help us in this fight or flight response. But in 90 seconds, and this is already been researched, all these chemicals wash out of our body. So if we are mindful of our fear, our sensation of fear, what it is, how it feels like in our body, you can actually perceive it come and then go. But the problem is we usually think again about what scared us. It's like comes up. That's why you have soldiers who come back from Afghanistan, from these war zones, from Iraq. They have PTSD because they have it in their head. So every time something triggers that fear or trauma response, boom, they go into this cycle and they get this trauma. But if we practice mindfulness, meditation, we can see how it arises, then how it goes away. then we can realize, the fear that I create in my mind, not the one that is actually threatened, not somebody pointing a gun at you or a knife at you, doesn't really have any substance. It just comes and goes if we don't grasp it. But we're very good at grasping onto our fear and what scares us. So that's why we get caught up in this. So if we really do practice being mindful of everything that arises in our mind, we will start to realize, it just comes and goes, just like every other thought that appears in our mind.
Thank you, Venerable. We are running a little bit low on time, so we have one last question I'll try to squeeze. What's the difference between anatta and shunyata? Any taker, please?
I think the Tibetan word for Shunyata is Tongpa Nyi, and Anatta is Dagme. Many a times they are used kind of as a synonym. Tongpa Nyi is more like, the Shunyata is more like speaking in terms of how things are devoid of intrinsic existence, and whereas anatta speaks on how things are selfless, no self. So in the category, when we talk about anatta, in the Mahayana teachings, what is being categorized within the anatta is the no self, or the selflessness of individual and selflessness of phenomena. So these two are categorized. So in short, like, both are same in being selfless or empty in nature. So I would kind of like, not to complicate, I mean, I would consider these two as synonyms.
Thank you. Dr. Giuliano, or maybe from the Pali tradition perspective, there should be some textual differences, right, between these two.
I would say that there, in the Pali tradition, in the sutta and also in commentaries, I think that the two terms are used mostly interchangeably, and two interchangeable terms, and anatta is much more frequent than Shunyata, though there are chapters devoted to, there are suttas, entire suttas like the Chula Shunyata Sutta, Ma Shunyata Sutta, and some chapters like in the Patisamhita Magga, the Shunyata Kata, that are devoted specifically to Shunyata. So the description might be slightly different, but they are sometimes explicitly said to be synonymous. So I would say maybe one thing that I might have noticed is that in two texts they are directly related to Shunyata, and they use the term Shunyata all the time. So the two Chula Shunyata Sutta and Ma Shunyata Sutta. There is a kind of method to see everything as anatta. It's a kind of a gradual method. It's called descent into emptiness, sunyata vakanti, going gradually down deeper and deeper into emptiness by seeing everything selfless all the time and at various levels. So yes, I think that it's mostly a matter of nuances and emphasis, but they are basically interchangeable.
Thank you, Dr. Giuliano. Venerable Sunim, you have any words to add to this?
No.
Okay. That's pretty clear. Thank you.
I think both Dr. Giuliani and Khenpo have explained it very clearly already. There's nothing more to add.
Okay, thank you. I think I would like to thank everybody here, all the organizers and all the venerable speakers, and Dr. Giuliano. We have to conclude this session. I got so excited during this discussion this evening. Somehow it's really uplifting, I would say, and very fresh and very beautiful in my view. Thank you, everybody. That's very, very kind. So before we end, may I request each of you to please say your preferred dedication prayer so we can all dedicate together.
Chanjo semjo rinpoche, maje panan kejoji, keba nyamba mevayam kone kondo keba shu.
Thank you, Khenpo. Venerable Sunim.
So, we recite the 4 vows. Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to save them all. Delusions are endless. We vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite. We vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable. We vow to attain it. May all beings be well, happy, and safe.
Thank you, Venerable Sunim. Dr. Giuliano, please.
Yassasava parikkina aharesha nissito sunnyata nimittosha vimokko yassa gusharo akaseva sakuntanam padantassam duranayam. Briefly independent from nourishment, having destroyed the poisons, abiding in emptiness, in freedom, in signlessness. It cannot be found in the sky like the path of a bird.
Thank you. I just found out that we will have a part 2 to this beautiful discussion in October. So we look forward to that. So now we will have some announcement. One second, please. We have been receiving very positive, I would say very good comments from our audience today. I think many people have received the answers. Thank you. So we will conclude this here. So there are no announcements apparently, apart from that we will have this session, the continuity of this discussion again in October. Thank you very much, and may all beings be happy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.